privilege for me to get to introduce our FDA speaker who's going to be providing summary remarks, who is Dr. Aliza Thompson, who is a clinical team leader in the Division for Cardiovascular and Renal Products, which is within the Center from Drugs. You heard from Dr. Ellis Unger from that same center this morning. In her capacity, she and her team actually focus on the products that are being developed for renal-related indications. So it's a great honor and pleasure to hear from Dr. Thompson.
James, thank you for that introduction, for doing such a great job today. And certainly thank you to the National Kidney Foundation and also the Alport Syndrome Foundation for putting this meeting on. And first and foremost, thank you all. Thank you, the patients, for coming in and sharing what are very personal stories. I know that we have learned a lot from listening to you today, in that it's been very helpful to understand what your experience have been and also what your preferences are in terms of treatments. I think I was allotted maybe 20 minutes to talk, and I'm only going to talk for a few minutes. This has been a fabulous day, and really the important part was for us to hear from you. But before I speak, I'd like to ask my colleagues from FDA who are still here to please stand up and to please introduce themselves. As James mentioned, I'm in the Division of Cardiovascular and Renal Products, but fortunately we have a whole team of people here today, and I'd like them to tell you where they are from. And so maybe we'll start on the left side of the room.
Let me know if you can hear me. My name is Heather Fitter, and I work at the FDA. I'm a clinical team leader in the Division of Neurology Products, and part of my role there is to work to oversee drug development for hearing products. So products to either reverse hearing loss or prevent hearing loss. And I've really learned a lot today, and I appreciate many of you sharing your stories, because in the clinical trials that we put together, we often, measure things that are objective, like we do audiometry for hearing tests. We look at speech voice recognition. But what I heard today were some of the other things that hearing loss affects, and how things that we can ask patients when they're in clinical trials to maybe get another assessment, like isolation, social isolation, misunderstanding, and things like that can bring us a little closer to what you are all experiencing. So, thank you.
My name is Winston Tang. I'm a medical officer in gene and cell therapy. And if we're ever going to affect a cure, this is the branch that I'm in is the way to go. After all, this is a monogenic disease, and the progress that's been made in the last 5 years in gene therapy is amazing. So hopefully we'll find the cure one day.
My name's Mona Khurana. I'm a pediatric nephrologist, and I'm a team leader in the Division of Pediatric and Maternal Health in Cedar. Our division is focused on promoting the development of safe and effective drugs for children in all therapeutic areas, including for renal diseases such as Alport syndrome. I just really wanted to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. We will be taking them back to FDA.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I'm Blake Bannister. I'm from OSP in the Center for Drugs. Like many of my colleagues here, I work closely with someone known as Meghna Chelasani, who's been at FDA for a very long time, putting on a lot of these meetings. And so just a lot of the work that's gone into it. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. Thanks.
We may need you to maybe rotate down, maybe use the mic next to Lucas. Is that mic working, hopefully?
My name is Krisha. We working a little bit different department at the Office of Orphan Products Development. We do not review drugs for marketing, but we designate products which are treating the rare diseases. And then after you receive the designation, the developer will receive financial incentives. Thank you.
Eleanor Dixon Terry, also from the Office of Orphan Product Developments. Happy to be here.
I'm Lucas Kemp. I'm the Associate Director of the Rare Diseases Program within CEDAR. So this is one of the many programs, PFDD sessions that I've been to, because these are very popular for our rare disease community. I have to say this was a very good one. You were very eloquent in getting across all the areas that are most affected by your disorder, and we're actually able to identify some that weren't brought up in the initial surveying. So that was really helpful for the physicians who are going to be reviewing the applications, who go through CEDAR to understand not only what you have, what other things that may be impacting the drugs that you're on when they're designing the trials, the problems you have participating in the trials, the diagnostic odyssey that you all go through in order to get to the point where you even have a diagnosis. So it was really nice to see how well this program came together to capture all of that.
My name is Jaclyn, and I'm with the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. And my role there is to facilitate these sorts of, this information being talked about within the center, making sure that my colleagues at CBER know that these opportunities are available to them. And I'm very happy to be here today, and I learned a great deal from you all.
So thank you to the FDA team. Just should admit from the start that I have a horrible memory, and this meant that when I was in medical school I struggled through anatomy, and it means today that when my husband or my children want me to remember something, I tell them to write it down or rather text me, because they know they can't trust my memory. That said, I would say that the stories that I've heard at meetings like the one today, the stories that the patients tell, do stay with me, and I think that's not surprising. They are very powerful stories, and as Lucas mentioned, we're told in a very eloquent manner today, and again, very personal stories which have a profound impact. I think the other reason the stories in your stories stay with me is they speak to why I think many of us go into medicine, and I think they also speak to why many of us ultimately come to work at agencies like the Food and Drug Administration, and that is because we want to do more than be able to tell patients what disease they have. We actually want to be able to tell them that we have treatments for them and that we can make their lives better. And obviously, you all are going to be an integral part of that. Meetings like the one today are really the first step in a process, and it's an ongoing process, and it's an ongoing discussion in which you all, as the patients, need to be actively engaged and involved in. We need you to be. It was very helpful to hear what your preferences are. It was very helpful to learn about your experiences with your disease. But designing trials that determine and show the efficacy of new therapies is incredibly challenging, and it can be incredibly challenging in a rare disease space. So we're going to need you to continue to engage in that discussion, hopefully by working through the Alport Syndrome Foundation and possibly the National Kidney Foundation, possibly via other means, to continue to engage in the discussion with us about the design of these trials, about the endpoints that will be used to establish the efficacy of these therapies. I think, as you heard from one of the speakers earlier today, though what many of you want is to find therapies that slow or prevent progression to kidney failure, the reality is it takes so long to get there that we're not going to be able to use that as an endpoint in our trials, and we'll have to use something else. So you should be involved in the discussions of what that something else is. It's also critical that you understand that because of the time course of progression of this disease and in many diseases, even though we want trials that are short and give us quick answers, unfortunately, sometimes it does take a few years for the trials to give us a reliable readout on the efficacy of these therapies. It also means that we need people to be willing to be randomized to placebo arms and to stay in those arms for a few years. And so that's also a discussion we need to have with you all. There are other issues here, and those issues stem from the fact that, unfortunately, this is a disease you're born with, and it affects adolescents. And there are additional considerations, obviously, whenever we are doing studies in people who are not adults. And so, again, it's critical that you remain engaged in the discussion about these issues and help us sort through some of these challenges. The other aspect of this, in terms of being critical to advance the development of therapies in this space, is obviously your willingness to participate in clinical trials and studies of new interventions, and also other studies that chart the natural history of this disease, because these studies are critical for understanding how to design these intervention trials, what endpoints we look at, and to also understand and divide you up in terms of what your course of disease is most likely to be like. And as noted by a number of people here today, in order for you to participate in these trials, they have to be designed in a way that's acceptable to you, that fits with how your lives are, understanding that you need to live full lives and that you have a number of obligations, and that especially our children need to be, quote, normal, or need to be able to engage in the activities that their friends do, etc., not be pulled away from them. Perhaps in closing, again, today is an important first step, but it's the first step, I hope, in part of a much longer dialogue and interaction with you all about these issues. There are a number of people who came out from the FDA who took their Friday off to listen to you speak. We are available to you. We want to be accessible to you, to engage in this long dialogue, to ultimately lead us to, I shouldn't say the word cure. We do have a colleague who hopefully will get you there, but if not a cure, hopefully important advances. So do hope you will remain in close contact with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson. Finishing your last thought, I did want to let you all know that the next step that ASF is taking forward in this dialogue is going to be taking place in October. We are already planning a meeting with medical leaders and researchers from around the world, and I'm going to be asking Dr. Thompson and maybe some FDA folks here who would be the best person to reach out to attend. It's a meeting where we're going to take the information that we learned today, look at the natural history data acquired through the Athena study, look at some of the information we've gained through the registries, and put together some suggestions or guidelines for clinical trials for drug developers. So we are continuing that step forward. And before I share the next steps, just want to say thank you so much. First to the FDA. A little over a year ago, we had a dream that we wanted to do this, and thank them for accepting our letter of intent. Thank them all for spending their time today. All of the individuals who came here today and spent their time learning about Alport syndrome. We are so grateful to you for your support, especially Dr. Unger and Dr. Thompson for speaking today. So please thank them all. I expected to get a little emotional when I heard the panelists and when I heard the stories, but I have to say, hearing from the FDA people who are here today, who are guiding the process of therapies, and hearing them reiterate the voices of patients today, it was incredibly touching and shows how effective all of you were today. So thank you. Thank you especially to the panelists. When we first asked them to participate, I knew that I was going to be asking of their time, but in going through the development of their testimonies, I realized how deep we were asking them to go emotionally and to dig out the dirty and bring it out. And I know that was challenging because so many of our panelists are amazing, positive leaders in our community who are shining examples of how you can live a long, healthy life with Alport syndrome. And for them to be able to bear themselves in that way and put their open wounds out for all to see for the benefit of everyone with Alport syndrome, we are so grateful to them. I want to thank the drug developers who are here, not only for their financial support, which has made this meeting possible, and for, of course, we are grateful, but also for their partnership in listening to the patient's voice, in coming here today and listening to you, in working with ASF and trying to develop drugs and therapies that will truly benefit you and trying to hear your voice in the patient perspective throughout the process. We are incredibly grateful to them for their support in both areas. So thank you very much to Reata, Regulus, Retrophin, and BI. I've been jokingly saying today that, everyone here has now met the entire staff of the Alport Syndrome Foundation because that is me. I am executive director and jokingly say, head chef and bottle washer. I have wonderful volunteers, a very dedicated board, and some amazing contractors. But there is no way that I, the staff of one, could have ever put a meeting of this scope and success together without the partnership of NKF. So thank you so much to Dave Feldman and everyone at NKF for helping advance our rare disease to this level of a stage. We are so grateful. So next steps. I know some of you may have been a little shy today, didn't say comments that you may have thought, or for those of you on the webinar who wanted to jump in or are listening to this after the fact and have comments that you want to give. There's going to be an open comment period of 30 days. And so if anything I've said applies to you, if anybody here thinks of something tonight and say, oh, I wish I had said that, please feel free to send your comments to either myself or Dave Feldman. Everyone who's registered for this webinar will get an email with our emails in there. For those of you who are here, you can write down or take a picture of our email addresses right there so that you can send us your comments, and those comments will be included in the Voice of the Patient report. And we've alluded to that a few times today, but that Voice of the Patient report is being drafted today by a medical writer who has been taking copious notes. It's going to be compiled by ASF and NKF with the help of our wonderful medical co-chairs and chairmen, Dr. Rowe, Dr. Cashman, and Dr. Simon. And then we will take a look at it, we will compile it and submit it to the FDA. And as you've noted, it will be a part of all therapies going forward for Alport syndrome that go before the FDA. It'll also be available on both our and NKF's website, and we'll be distributing it as widely as possible. So we are very excited about that. David, did you want to say a few more words, or not to put you on the spot?
Well, it's really been, I don't know, have my back to one half of the room. It's been a real privilege and an honor to be involved in this meeting and to hear everybody, your stories. They're inspiring. And I'll close by saying what I said at the beginning. I've really enjoyed coming to know the burdens that you face, but also seeing your fortitude, your resilience, and your determination to fight this disease. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you once again, and as always,